A couple years ago, I had a heart spasm and then some back problems, and I had hired a bunch of staff to help with the garden here at Prosperity Homestead. I'm going to share with you some of the insights about that and some of the challenges you may be facing, but also some encouragement that right now is the time to have a garden. Hey, this is Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. So I had this heart spasm out in the front yard, basically felt like somebody shoved a spear through my chest. Now, it wasn't a heart attack, but it was kind of a heart spasm associated with migraine headaches and other problems I've had in the past. So I'm rushed off to the hospital, and then for about 3 to 4 weeks after that, I couldn't do anything without being out of breath or just, chest hurting. I did pass my physical, the stress test that happens after this type of event. However, I just wasn't there for digging hugel cultures and, setting up swales and doing a lot of the work that's necessary for permaculture. In fact, if you watch any of the permaculture videos, you'll see they're trenching and they're digging and they're carrying logs and materials. And frankly, there was quite a bit of work here. So I recovered a bit by hiring some folks to help with work like housekeeping and somebody to mow the grass and someone to dig some of these hugel cultures and things. And I felt like I really had failed. I felt like I just was a weak old bastard and life was just behind me and I'm too old to do this kind of stuff. But I was only like 30, 40 something. So actually I was 40 something. Ultimately, I got back engaged and then I overdid it. So I healed up from the chest thing. I did the walking. I did the exercises that were required. I did the light work that was required. And I recovered and then overdid it and basically ended up, slashing and cutting and doing a lot of stuff that's part of permaculture, the chop and drop, that kind of thing. And I ended up with tennis elbow in both elbows. Now, this is not to have any pity on me. This is the result of 9 hours a day in an office in front of a computer. And it just completely ruined your body. But long story short, I hired some more people and I basically had a big staff. I had enough people on site doing work that the city of Martinsville kind of took me aside and said I had violated some kind of employee at the house bit. Now, I hired all these folks through staffing companies like we talk about. If you have a big project, you hire an excavator, you hire laborers, you hire the people you need so that you can get the project done in a few days rather than taking months to get a project done. Because again, Prosperity Homestead, we talk about growing within seasons. We're not going to build some big giant equipment or system to extend seasons if we can't at first grow within the seasons that are already there. So then again, I mentioned the back pain. I overdid it, picked up something and pulled my back out. I decided right then and there, even though permaculture and the videos, they show you the lasagna gardens, they show you the raised beds, they show you the no-till, they show you all these other things. I felt I had to get all that in place right away. And I stepped back and decided, you know what? I'm going to focus on zone 1. I'm going to focus on consistent and regular vegetables. I'm going to focus on soil building. I'm going to focus on my organic waste. How do I process my organic waste? Now, all these things don't require a lot of heavy lifting. Even the composting systems that we teach here don't require any heavy lifting. I also went through and looked at ergonomics. How am I using my tools? Am I using them correctly? Now, at the time, I didn't bother to get like a BCS tractor or anything like that. I was basically doing everything without any type of gasoline fuel. And I still like to keep it that way. Even though I have a BCS tractor, I simplified everything to be simple, primitive hand tools. In fact, the garden soil is so tender now that you can basically pick up a stick and use it to dig your little hole to put in your plant start. The mulch is thick. And in my cover crops are strong, so I really don't have a lot of weeding to do, so I'm not bending over all the time. And I've done raised beds and permanent raised beds, so I don't have to worry about tillage, and I can reach the beds easier. I can get to them easier, and basically, I do look like a lazy bastard when I'm out in the garden. I have been known to just lay out in the garden and just pick vegetables and relax and chill out, because between the mulch paths, the raised beds, the chop and drop, I'm really out there with simple hand tools. Now, I do practice stretching when I use the hand tools, and it looks a little weird. In fact, I've recorded quite a number of hours of demonstration video, anywhere from digging up bamboo to building new beds, your first hugelkultur, all these different things. And you'll notice that I try not to videotape myself because I will exaggerate a little bit when I'm working. One of the challenges that I ended up with the tennis elbow is because I was brute force chopping and slashing the small trees and things that had come up, and I was hauling materials, and I was really just pushing too hard. So the lesson here is gardening doesn't have to be difficult. In fact, when you garden the right way, it is a cultivation that will last a lifetime. You can be 90 years old or a 40-something-year-old guy who's completely out of shape, and you're going to get the results that you need because you work with nature. Going in there and manhandling it and plowing through everything destroys the key elements that build fertility in soil. I was chatting with somebody a couple days ago. I don't feel inadequate that I don't have a lasagna garden bed. However, we're going to build one this year, and I'm going to build it like a parody. I'm going to just go overboard with it just to show you how this works. But I've actually already arranged, this is the more important part, by the way, of your homestead, is I've already arranged a dump truck load of manure. I have a couple sources for round bales. I'm not really sure yet. And you do realize a round bale is 1,000 pounds. So I'm going to pull 2 round bales in with a trailer, and we'll probably have to chop them up with a machete. I've got cardboard and newspaper to do the layering. And I've already tilled out a bed with the BCS, which is like flying a TARDIS. But the BCS did make trenching a lot easier. Because one thing is, if you're trenching with a shovel and you're trenching, I think I got 150 feet, that gets a little old quick. But my point being is if you step back to that zone 1 is the area immediately around your house. I want that to be a great curb appeal. I want it to be high utility value. This year we just planted a mass of onions, Egyptian walking onions and regular bulbing onions. And we've also used one of the beds to build up the compost that we're going to use for potting mix. So we took leaf mold, different types of soil, mixed them all together, and we kind of have this big mound in one of the beds so that we can start potting out. But that's high utility value. I walk out my front door, I fill up a tray, I put seed in it, and I'm done. See, in the past, I'd walk all the way down to the designated garden space, and then I'd have to walk all the way back to the garage and get a wheelbarrow to fill it up full of soil that was at some other location. Now I'm kind of improve the workflow so that I can streamline and get things done easier. Now, I am trying to get more exercise by getting out and walking more and getting out and setting up. Like I use a scythe, for example. A scythe is pretty good exercise, but I'm looking at the ergonomics. I'm making sure I'm using it the right way so that I don't have the back pain and so that I don't have strain on muscles that aren't used that way very much. The composting, for example, is done in cattle panels that have been turned into a ring. And if you lift over the cattle panel, the use of a pitchfork is very easy. It's a very rhythmic movement. In fact, most of the things have been designed so you can simply just put on some music and just, put your little earbuds in and just chill out and relax. I even trenched out several basins that are used as part of a rainwater capture or erosion management. And they were, I think they're like 1,000 square foot a basin. And of course, this has bunds around the outside. It's looking really good. We can include some pictures of that on the website. I dug that out in probably 2 or 3 evenings, which is about 6 to 7 hours of work. And I really wasn't in pain afterwards. I was using the shovel correctly. I was using a hoe instead of shoveling. So the hoe would be used to break up soil, a big heavy hoe. A shovel would be used to scoop up the soil into a wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow would be used to drive it over to another area rather than just brute force throwing the material. And then, of course, we're using grasses, for example, to hold soil in place and to hold structures in place, even temporarily, which gives us, again, additional biomass and the biomass then feeds our composting system. Our composting system feeds our potting soils. Our potting soils create plant starts. The plant starts go out into no-dig beds that are heavily mulched. Because they're heavily mulched, there's no weeds. So if there are any weeds, we pop them out and just throw them on top of the mulch and let them dry out and die. So I'm not hauling materials anywhere. Even when we trench out the paths, the wood chip paths, after they've broken down, it's just moving very light soil. So I want to encourage you to look at the components of your homestead, not judge it against what you think a homestead should have, but what are the components of your homestead that have highest utility value to what you're doing. You want to organize those around the property in such a way that they're easy to get to. You want to look at energy flows. Where are common materials used? I've actually learned a lot by kitting my tools. So when I'm going out to trim trees, I have a toolbox that is just the shears and the clippers and the sharpening tools. And I carry that out to the job site and I work in one area. And then when I'm done, I take it back to the central tool location. The central tool location is very close to other items in other places that we do work. I even look at, we're doing a lot of excavation work, so I stopped hiring laborers. And I'm focusing on the excavation work. It's about $10,000 to $20,000 to finish this job off. So I'm actually looking at, well, how can I improve accessibility so that if I want to drive a truck of materials down the hill, I can just take a full-size truck all the way down the hill to where I might be building a shed or I might be working on something. Or, for example, if I need to take things from the garden, the harvests from the garden, what would be the way to get those harvests up with either the two-wheel tractor and a trailer or a full-size truck or a hand cart? Making paths wider so that the hand cart can go down there so that you can deliver compost directly to the location with minimal effort. I want you to look at those flows. Now, we've done energy audits for clients to look at their waste and how they can recycle that on site. Also, what waste needs to be recycled off-site. We've looked at water management as part of your energies and controls, and we've helped people with their access. And that's what a design plan is about. Now, once you have that design plan, your implementation really is going to be on your schedule, aligned with seasonal variations. So I want you to get complete phases of projects done. If you're going to dig a hugelkultur, I want you to get that done before the wet season. Get soil on top of it. And if you can't get soil on top of it, leave it open for bird habitat. And now the people around you are going to be confused about what you're doing, and they're going to be wondering. But if you look at any of the major estates, the Biltmore estate, you look at Ranolda, you'll always find this little nook area off to the side, which is the greenhouse, composting, plant starts. All of that is like a station. And then you'll find the main house. And then you'll find an area for entertainment where if you're at the area for entertainment, you don't see the gardens. You see the ornamental gardens, but you don't see the vegetable gardens. You see in a lot of permaculture sites where the ornamentals are mixed with the vegetables or they're mixed with the herb plants. We have started for every garden area, including one bed that is just wildflowers. And so there's one bed that's idle. It's wildflowers, perennial wildflowers, and it's like a pollination station right next to where we're growing food. That way the bees don't have to go very far. They can cross-pollinate the whole environment, and then our garden beds tend to have some kind of flowering plant throughout the entire season. Now, again, we're in the temperate climate, so we have heavy wet winters, and we have a decent growing season, but you can, again, build by design the labor-saving elements so that you can get the most from what you're doing. Now when I hire laborers, it's for larger projects and less frequently. So you don't have to spend so much on it. Now, I was hiring folks and quite embarrassed about doing it because I had medical conditions. Please don't be embarrassed about hiring people. If you need to get a job done by spring, get it done. Get the people in there. Get the job done. You're going to feel so much better about it. And especially if you're in an urban environment, it's less confusing for the neighbors. Now, mind you, I've got a cascading aquaculture system in my driveway right now, and that's quite confusing to the neighbors. but I'm staging out the system before I put it in place, and I want to make sure it works. You're still going to have those cases, but ultimately you'll be able to get the right people in place. You'll be able to get the job turned around. You'll be able to set up for the next season to maintain maximum prosperity in the abundance that comes with growing some of your own food and being a part of that community of nature restoration. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you have any questions about this or anything that we share, you can visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Thanks for listening.